Hey, if you're hearing this, then you fell for my clickbait. Anyway, my old psychologist used funny language to describe me, like antisocial personality disorder and a possible psychopath and potentially a threat to himself and others. Needless to say, I don't talk to her anymore. Anyway, I'm bored, so I'm using this platform to express my creativity. So until they start to tie those bodies to me, enjoy.
Stanley Kubrick, a name that can divide any group of film enjoyers. Some say he's a tortured artist expressing his craft, while others call him an overrated hack, while others say he was the guy who filmed the faking of the moon landing. In my life, I have organically watched 4 of Kubrick's movies without knowing who Kubrick was or his style of production. Those would be A Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, 2001 A Space Odyssey, and The Shining over the course of maybe 15 years. And I'll say I enjoyed these movies as pieces of film media that surprised me. For me, Kubrick films have always been something that can surprise me as someone who can usually predict who will be the bad guy in a movie or how the plot will choose to wrap itself up. So I find it difficult to enjoy films sometimes. So today, as a man with nothing better to do, I've decided to sit down and watch the entire Kubrick catalog of movies. I will note that Kubrick started off doing documentaries, which I will be skipping over for no particularly good reason. It's films with a plot that are my driving force here, and we'll be starting off with Fear and Desire from 1952. Our story starts off with 4 men fighting in an unidentified war. Our protagonists have crash-landed behind enemy lines and seek a means by which to return to their side of the conflict. Our boys decide that their best chance of escape is to build a raft and, under the cover of night, ride the river back to base. Slowly, the stress starts to overtake the team and a madness starts to set in. Now, I always knew that Kubrick was very anti-war, and that exists as a theme in many of his movies, but at first I started to believe that this was more of an action film until the team guts 2 enemy soldiers for their rifles and some cold stew. With the men talking about being on some sort of island and trying to escape by going down a river, I believe they were all outright insane. Mac, for example, discovers that they landed not far from an enemy military command post, and becomes obsessed with the idea of killing the enemy general stationed there.
It's better to roll up your life into one night and one man and one gun. It hurts too much to keep hurting everyone else in every direction. And to be hurt, with all the separate hates exploding day after day. You can't help it. A curse buzzes out of your mouth with every word you say. And nobody alive can tell which is which, or what you mean. Yeah. You try door after door when you hear voices you like behind them. But the knobs come off in your hand.
Another member of the team falls into a state of mania after being left alone with a girl the team captures on the suspicion that she works for the general.
You want to hear more? Do you? Huh? All right. Then the spirit in the magician's power goes back to the island and tells Miranda that her father's dead. The spirit sings how he's dead at the bottom of the ocean. His bones are coral, his eyes are pearls, and Miranda, her father's dead. Dead? Can't you understand anything? Dead. 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 Now do you understand? Before I was a general, and now I'm a fish. Hurrah for the magicians! The river. It's blood, Mac. Cold. Cold. I'm going for a swim. Come on in, Mac. Listen to them. It's blood.
I honestly started to think that the whole team were insane and really on their side of the war, running around the forest stabbing their own comrades. The fact that the girl they capture either doesn't speak English or is mute as the enemy general does speak English really enforced me on this. Are they who they think they are? Are they even a war to begin with? I was kept in a state of curiosity throughout the entire film. Besides all that, I would say that this was a solid B. The fact that this movie was only an hour long means it didn't overstay its welcome while maintaining a position of curiosity. Kubrick himself apparently hated this film, calling it a bumbling amateur film exercise, even going so far as to destroy the original master copy of the film. Really, this film gets a little bit more leeway on the grounds that it was the first Kubrick film, and where you can kind of see a prototype forming for Kubrick's style, and beyond that, nothing impressive. But a young me always did like war movies, so I'm giving it a little extra. Now on to Killer's Kiss from 1955. Kubrick was never happy with how Fear and Desire turned out and wanted to make up for it with Killer's Kiss. Borrowing the equivalent of nearly $500,000 in today's money from a rich uncle, he set out to make something he could be proud of. Set in New York in the 1950s, this film noir is about a boxer named Davy Gordon in the twilight years of his career. After being defeated by a younger upstart, Gordon contemplates his departure from the big city back to his family ranch. As a country boy who's moved to the big city in my youth, I understand this, as I didn't make it a full year. Gordon has a crush on this dancer named Gloria he can see from his studio apartment, but he's not the only one crushing. A man named Vinny, who owns a jazz club that Gloria dances at, is mad for her. As Vinny owns a jazz club, lives in New York City, and is named Vinny, we can assume he is with the mob. Gloria does not care for Vinny's advancements, thus giving Gordon a reason to finally talk to her.
Hey, what's going on in there?
Vinny, who is in the mob, does not take getting cucked lightly and overreacts. I'm gonna be real with you though, I didn't care for the plot of Killer's Kiss. Really, the thing that kept me watching was the setting and cinematography. Being raised by my grandparents, we always had black and white TV shows playing, so the technology used in these old movies never bothered me, but the setting of old movies gives me this odd sense of nostalgia. I found myself looking at the sets and background more than the characters. Even the advertisements of days long gone by fascinated me and engrossed me in the setting. On the topic of cinematography, Kubrick really improved from Fear and Desire with the use of more experimental camera shots. The worst thing an old movie can do, in my personal opinion, is filming a long scene in a single shot. Not that this is a bad thing all the time, but old TV shows and movies used to use this as a way to save time and money all the time, and it takes away from the experience of watching. One of my favorite scenes was during the boxing fight. The camera moves and helps with immersion, even switching to a point of view at times. Really, the best part about this movie is that you can kind of see Kubrick start to develop his style. It's still in its infancy, but you can see it starting. Of the actors in this movie, the only one that is popular in any way was Frank Silvera, who played Vinny. Fans of The Twilight Zone may recognize him from the episode Person or Persons Unknown. Frank also played side characters on a number of famous westerns, including The Wild Wild West, Gunsmoke, Rawhide, Daniel Boone, and Bonanza. All in all, I'd say this was a solid C. It's not bad, but I don't really think I gained anything from watching this movie besides a bit of nostalgia. I wish I could rate it higher, but I liked Fear and Desire more and its depictions of the horrors of war. If the setting and cinematography is the only thing your movie has going for it, unless you're producing a documentary, it's just not good, and the critics of the time agreed. Kiss was more than a warm-up for Kubrick's talents, said one review, and we're gonna pray the next film is better. Moving on to The Killing from 1956, this can best be summed up as an old-timey heist movie. I will say that this movie was ahead of its time by nearly 30 years, with this movie telling the story of a group of loosely associated men getting together to rob a racetrack casino of all of its gambling profits.
You don't know who they are, and they don't know who you are. That makes sense to you, doesn't it?
Well, yes, I guess so, but
Makes sense to me, all right.
You know, that thing the Peaky Blinders do for money? Yeah, they're gonna rob those people. Our crime crew consists of Johnny Clay, a criminal who has recently been released from prison, Marvin Unger, who acts as the team's financial sponsor, George Petey, who is the cashier at the racetrack and professional simp.
Hello.
feeling okay?
Fine.
I've been kind of sick today. I keep getting pains in my stomach.
Maybe you got a hole in it, George. Do you suppose you have?
A hole in it? How would I get a hole in my stomach?
How would you get one in your head? Oh, fix me a drink, George. I think I'm developing some pains myself.
Sherry, can't I ever say anything at all without you joking me about it?
Hurry up with that drink, George. The pains are getting worse.
Mike O'Reilly, who works as a bartender at the same racetrack, and Randy Keenan, who is a corrupt police officer.
Officer! Oh, thank heaven, hurry, come quick. They're killing each other. I always knew they...
The boys have devised a perfect plan down to the last minute to steal $2 million, or the equivalent of over $20 million in today's money. Now, how can this go wrong? If you've guessed that George the simp would spill the beans to his bitch wife, then you'd be correct.
Don't you at all be surprised.
You better be here, you hear me, Sherry? You will be, won't you? You wouldn't do anything foolish, would you?
I certainly wouldn't want to, but as long as you don't trust me or have the slightest bit of faith in me.
George's wife will go on to tell her boyfriend all about the heist, thus creating an unnecessary chaotic risk factor. First rule of crime, for all you kids out there, you never involve a woman in crime. The exception is when the crime in question must involve a woman, such as prostitution or using a woman's charm on the target of the crime. All other cases you should avoid involving women. It's just a really good idea, and anyone that has a problem with that wants to go commit a crime, do it, see who rats you out first. Also, there's this one guy that looks like Ted Cruz, thus proving that Ted Cruz is possibly old enough to indeed be the Zodiac Killer.
It speaks to the soul. Good queso relaxes you.
Well, yes, I guess so, but it makes sense to me, all right.
No, I'm never letting that go. I will say that one thing that really hurts this movie is this off-screen narrator, which tells you the time and what's happening.
Earlier that morning at 5 a.m., Red Lightning was fed only a half portion of feed in preparation for the 7th race that afternoon, the $100,000 Lansdowne Stakes. After the first race, Mike was very busy.
Personally, I don't like this style of narration as it deprives me of the mystery of putting the plan together. Most modern heist films, you spend most of the movie in suspense, wondering how they're going to pull it off. Oh, is this where it's going to fail? How will they improvise? With the introduction of this narrator, it kind of ruins the suspense of it. It might have worked for the time, but in the modern world, it just simply hinders the movie's quality. Anyway, besides the main five, we also have these two hired goons, which I really enjoyed. One, whose real name is Nicholas something Georgian, was a real-life wrestler and chess master, which is also his character in the film.
Oh, you patzer. You missed the move. Knight to knight 5, pawn takes knight. Rook takes rook, queen to rook 4, check. King to bishop.
Go away, bother someone else. You don't know what you're talking. He couldn't do that. You don't know what you're talking.
Shut up, patzer.
This absolute unit, whose job is to get in a bar fight, thus distracting security. The other guy is a sharpshooter who was very unlucky. See, our sharpshooter is hired to shoot one of the horses during the race to cause a distraction. To do this, he bribes a black security officer and makes up a sub-story about how he can't walk because of his service during the war. The security guy turns out to like our horse assassin and brings him a magazine, some other things. All around just kind of being a cool guy. One of the things he actually brings is a horseshoe for good luck, which is, I don't know, kind of charming if not a little annoying. Realizing that this guy is going to be a potential witness to a crime, our assassin resorts to the gamer word to get this guy to fuck off, thus sealing his fate.
Be a nice guy and go on about your business.
Sure, boss. Sorry to bother you. My mistake.
What with the era that this movie was made, I was curious what racist roles this guy has also played during Hollywood, and yeah, there's plenty of that. Actually, James J. Edwards, who is the actor in question, was a veteran of the Second World War and had a fairly successful career doing acting, primarily appearing in war movies, some of which were actually quite famous. Anyway, they get the money out only for things to not go exactly as planned. See, the cop was responsible for taking the money off-site and dropping it at a dead drop. Later, Johnny is to pick up the loot and bring it to the safe house. Due to traffic caused by people fleeing the racetrack, though, Johnny is 15 minutes late. This is where the chaos factor from earlier kicks in, and Georgia's whore of a wife has her boyfriend hiding out there to raid the safe house, thus to steal the money. This, of course, ends in a shootout, and George honestly does the right thing. Not knowing what could possibly have happened in there, it is his duty to flee and hide the money until a time later when it can be divided. Of course, a small number of fuck-ups results in a loss of a multi-million dollars. I was a little bit more spoilish with this one because I'm giving it a D. Don't get me wrong, it's not a horrible movie or anything, it's just not very good. If it wasn't for the fact that the Stanley Kubrick made this movie, then no one would remember it. Plus, I gotta be a little bit more brutish with some of these reviews because good things are to come later, and we've gotta have a D. In fact, critics at the time considered the camera work to be great, but the end production to be mediocre and the movie itself failing to earn back the cost to produce. However, some people have found the movie good enough to fund Kubrick's next film. Onwards to the next film, Paths of Glory, which is truly the first great Kubrick film, and I lend this to the first time Kubrick was allowed to be the director, writer, and producer all in one. This gave him full creative control and allowed him to perfect his craft down to the last minute detail, with this movie being a blend of To Kill a Mockingbird and All Quiet on the Western Front. What makes this movie great is how well it captures the horrors of the First World War, a time in human history where I, as a psychopath, can say war stopped being fun. I say fun because my lexicon lacks a proper word for my views on war, which I may best describe as war be a horrible thing, but peace makes for boring reading. Even reading about World War I just fills me with a sense of dread. For the first time, nearly the whole of humanity is involved in a global war over honestly the most petty of reasons. Entire nations putting massive quantities of their labor and resources to defeat an enemy. A pointless war where the noble warrior is given the most unhonorable death imaginable, and peasant levies are given rifles and told to replace those warriors by charging headfirst into a fortified position held by the enemy. Lambs led to the slaughter by blue-blooded bastards treating them like chess pieces, with the goal of smoking out the enemy by burning the bodies of their own countrymen. Let's not forget all the new ways we invented to kill one another in this war. The first airplane flight was less than 20 years before, and we devised a means to turn one of humanity's oldest dreams into a weapon to kill our fellow man. Mustard gas, first viable instances of submarine warfare, tanks, etc. The topple of kings whose bloodline have ruled for centuries in the rise of communism. I would sooner fight for the Axis in the Second World War than on either side of the First World War. It was that horrible. You know, this is the first time in human history we fought a war on mountains. No, not tall hills. No. Snow-covered mountains. I don't like this era of war. Nothing was really gained and so much senseless waste of life. It's not a good time in human history. Point is, this movie inspired within me an emotion that I've been waiting 4 movies to feel. Onto the plot, this movie has some blue-blooded bastard colonel, and he's given the order to capture a fortified German position called the Anthill. Command is told that this is impossible before a promotion's dangled in front of him. It is decided that the worn-out men suffering from PTSD are to sacrifice at least 65% of their numbers to capture the Anthill.
Ready to kill more Germans? That is, everything all right, soldier?
All right. Yes, sir, I'm all right.
Ha. Good fella. Are you married, soldier?
Married? Me married?
Yes, have you got a wife?
A wife? Have I got a wife?
He's a bit shell-shocked. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. There is no such thing as shell shock. Have you got a wife, soldier?
My wife? My wife? Yes, I have a wife. I'm never going to see her again. I'm going to be killed.
Get a grip on yourself. You're acting like a coward.
I am a coward, sir.
Snap out of it, soldier. Sergeant, I want you to arrange for the immediate transfer of this baby out of my regiment. I won't have other brave men contaminated by him. Yes, sir.
When, of course, this doesn't work, the commander notices one trench didn't charge headfirst into, their inevitable deaths, and decides to order a bombardment of their own trenches. This is on the grounds that the men penned down by heavy machine gun fire have committed mutiny by refusing to charge into that machine gun fire.
Reports, those are our own positions. He says it must be a mistake.
Confirm the order, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Our general takes the failure to capture the enemy position by sacrificing more than half his men hard and decides to take it out on the poor SOBs who simply wanted to live. The general decides to issue the punishment of decimation against his men to help heal his fragile ego. For the benefit of those that aren't history buffs out there, decimation is a practice started by the Romans to punish military fighters for cowardice, insubordination, mutiny, etc. The men would be chosen at random and executed, often by those spared the punishment. In defense of the practice, it helped the Romans defeat many enemies in defense of the nation against outsiders that the legionaries feared more than defeat. Of course, we don't practice this today, but it was still common practice up throughout the 20th century. Colonel Dax, who was also in the charge, happens to be one of the greatest criminal defense lawyers in all of France and believes that the men acted completely appropriate considering the situation that they were in. Due to this situation, he acts as the only legal defense these men get when put on trial. Of course, this doesn't go very well considering the nature of the case. I don't know about you, but I wasn't thinking about mutiny before this. I definitely have it on the table now.
I protest against being prevented from introducing evidence that I consider vital to the defense. The prosecution presented no witnesses. There has never been a written indictment of charges made against the defendants. And lastly, I protest against the fact that no stenographic records of this trial have been kept.
The rest of this film covers Dax's attempt to get the men spared execution on the grounds of not charging a fortified enemy machine gun nest like the poor bastards whose bodies littered no man's land. With his ace in the hole being to expose the attempted mass murder of French soldiers via orders of French command. Credit to the film, the display of despair shown in the men awaiting execution feels real.
There'll be a lot of dignitaries, newspaper men out there. You've got a wife and family. How do you want to be remembered?
I don't want to die.
Many of us will be joining you before this war's over.
I don't care. I don't want to die.
One poor bastard ends up with a concussion, and you'd think he'd be lucky. He's drugged up too, so he's going to be out of it, but no, the general is such a petty bastard about these men costing him a promotion that he orders the man to be awakened just before the firing squad ends his life. Hey, you want to see my favorite scene?
Colonel Dax, how would you like General Miro's job?
His what, sir?
His job.
Let me get this straight, sir. You're offering me General Miro's command?
Come, Colonel Dax, don't overdo the surprise. You've been after the job from the start. We all know that, my boy.
I may be many things, sir. But I'm not your boy.
Well, I certainly didn't mean to imply any biological relationship.
I'm not your boy in any sense.
You're trying to provoke me, Colonel?
Well, why should I want to do that?
Exactly. It would be a pity to lose your promotion before you get it. A promotion you have so very carefully planned for.
Sir, would you like me to suggest what you can do with that promotion?
Colonel Dax! You will apologize at once or I shall be placed under arrest.
I apologize for not being entirely honest with you. I apologize for not revealing my true feelings. I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again.
I was overjoyed at this scene. The last part of this movie really got me too. See, there's this captured German woman who actually is played by Kubrick's wife, is forced to sing a song for Dax's men. It brings a call back to the Shawshank Redemption where that Italian singing is played over the intercom system. For these men who have been given a death sentence just by fighting in this war, they are brought to tears by something beautiful. Living in the trenches, these men have probably forgotten the peace of waking up in a warm bed, the sight of a flower, the sensation of wind on their face without the worry of mustard gas or catching a bullet. You know, the things we take for granted. They are allowed one moment of humanity before being sent back to the trenches to kill or be killed. Now, the release of this film earned Kubrick both fame and infamy. Fame came in the form of many awards, including the 1959 Italian's Critics' Silver Ribbon, the Finnish Jussi Award, Diploma of Merit, won the Grand Prix of the Belgium Film Critics Association. In way of infamy, Paths of Glory received criticism in France, Belgium, and Switzerland for its depictions of the French military and legal system, even being banned in Switzerland until the 1970s. Kubrick also finally made a somewhat profitable film. While not profitable by today's standard, it did earn an estimated profit of around $300,000 at the time of release. Other fun facts is that most of the extras were played by over 600 German police officers, who did quite a wonderful job, seeing as a requirement for being a police officer in Germany at the time was military service. Actor Timothy Carey, who played one of the condemned men, was apparently a nightmare to work with, to the point of even faking his own kidnapping. He would be fired mid-production, and a body double played his remaining roles. A little bit of fun fact, Kubrick rented a farm field and personally had it sculpted into no man's land. A dedication of the craft you really don't see today. Apparently this movie cannot be shown on any US military base, and I have yet to find evidence that this ban has been lifted. And our last little fun fact is that the events in this movie actually happened. The charge into no man's land, the order to bombard the men in the trenches, the trial, execution, all this happened in real life. And it gives that film that little extra edge, to really make it good. Just that perfect depiction of the absolute hell that this era was. For my final score, I'm giving this an A and knocking every other film down by 1 space. Note that this is not of malice, but this film is objectively a great movie, and I understand why Kubrick hated Fear&Desire now. When you compare the two, Fear&Desire really is nothing more than an exercise by an amateur, while this is art. And the rest are just practice for art. Simply can't keep them at the levels they currently are at. Spartacus from 1960 marks the first color film in our video and one of the most impressive by scale. Spartacus is one of those epic scale movies they used to make before CGI was a thing, so all this is Hollywood magic, and thus it still looks good today. So we all know who Spartacus was. Slave, gladiator, warlord, and admittedly, my opinions are biased due primarily to religious reasons. A slave is a slave, and in that way, he is property no different from a farm animal. Though I do understand that a slave is still human, and the desire for freedom is found within all humans, and that slavery is inherently kind of a cruel system.
You have one now, Spot. You must take her.
Go away.
What will she think of you? Indeed, what will I think of you?
Go away.
Come. Be generous. We must learn to share our pleasures.
No.
You're not trying to escape, John. Direct your courage to the girl, Spartacus.
I'm not an animal!
So, it's not something I can begrudge a slave wanting his freedom. My problem is how this movie tries to romanticize Spartacus. While Spartacus was a real man who was a leader of a famous slave revolt, we have no first-hand accounts of his life. And the only one accounts we do are written nearly a century after his death, and history is of course written by the victor. With most of the Roman army proper fighting outside of Italy, Spartacus and his revolt waged a bandit war throughout Italy and seemingly avoided any opportunity to escape to freedom, to instead loot the country estates for wealth. All that being said, I don't like the guy, but this movie is based off a book, which also romanticizes a historical character, so it gets a little bit of leeway in that. On to what I like about this movie looks good and managed to not be outright historically inaccurate. A few things that I noticed was what appears to be dried peppers in the slave kitchen, the use of paper for very unimportant things when a wax tablet would have more than likely been used, stirrups which would have not been introduced to Europe for about another 500 years, little things only a history nerd would notice, so really we're doing pretty good. The setting is all around nice and they managed to make the countryside look impressive but humble, which many historical movies avoid in exchange for massive scale. Think of the movie Gladiator when they show the city of Rome. It's absurdly large, not to scale, but it does look impressive, and if you're not a history buff, it would work for you pretty well. With what I don't like, there's the introduction. As this is one of those epic films, the beginning of the movie has one of those old-timey 10-minute introductions where they show everyone's name, who's playing who, and all that, and that's followed up by a narrator whose narration I found offensive.
In the last century, before the birth of the new faith called Christianity, which was destined to overthrow the pagan tyranny of Rome and bring about a new society, the Roman Republic stood at the very center of the civilized world. Of all things fairest, sang the poet, first among cities and home of the gods is golden Rome. Yet even at the zenith of her pride and power, the Republic lay fatally stricken with a disease called human slavery. The age of the dictator was at hand, waiting in shadows for the event to bring it forth.
I don't enjoy the theory that proper morality can only come from an Abramist religion, which that would be my problem. Another part I didn't like is that there's a lot of homoerotic depictions of the Roman nobility, and I'm not saying Rome didn't have gays, I'm just saying the practice was not as widespread or celebrated as many people wish to make it out to be. I will say that you did get a laugh out of me for this one scene.
Do you eat oysters?
When I have them, master.
Do you eat snails?
No, master.
Do you consider the eating of oysters to be moral and the eating of snails to be immoral?
No, master.
Of course not. And taste is not the same as appetite, and therefore not a question of morals, is it? My taste includes both snails and oysters.
Linus, look. Across the river. There is something you must see. There, boy, is Rome. The might, the majesty, the terror of Rome. No man can withstand Rome. No nation can withstand her. How much less a boy? There's only one way to deal with Rome, Antoninus. You must serve her. You must abase yourself before her. You must grovel at her feet. You must love her. Isn't that so, Antoninus?
A few inches later.
What kind of work did you do? Singer of songs.
Yeah, I'd be running away too. I'm not going to talk much about the plot, seeing as Spartacus, that is the man, is still well known today and has been reworked into movies, TV shows, even a comic book. It's not like the other movies where the plot could be based around anything, so instead I'm just going to show the grand scale of this movie, and that's your motivation to go watch it. For Kubrick, this was the first major success, earning $60 million at the box office from a $12 million investment. What surprised me is that much of this film was all shot in California. For those that don't know, Kubrick was well known to be a perfectionist and often insisted upon shooting his scenes at a more accurate location, instead of doing the whole studio stage skit that a lot of people did. Kubrick even convinced the studio to shoot most of the battle scenes in Spain with the use of around 10,500 extras in the form of Spanish police officers, and it really shows. This is also one of the first times Kubrick really had to fight to keep his vision alive, especially when it came to the scale, as the studio wanted the movie done as cheaply and quickly as possible, and what else is new? Hell, if Da Vinci was still around today, his sponsors would want new masterwork done every week. This film is also the first to have a major cultural influence, and that would come in the form of I'm Spartacus. This has been referenced and parodied in just about every form of media, and most of you would at least recognize the time Family Guy did a cutaway gag based on it. We also have the first Kubrick conspiracy, where some people believe I'm Spartacus was, and I quote, meant to dramatize the solidarity of those accused of being communist sympathizers during the McCarthy era, who refused to implicate others and thus were blacklisted. Unquote. This was a big deal back in the day because the Red Scare was still a thing, and Americans used to worry about socialism instead of all around trying to support it in one way or another. I'll remind you that this is the guy people believe faked the moon landing, so this is kind of a trivial conspiracy. I just found it interesting. Gonna give Spartacus a solid B. I enjoy epics like this, like Lawrence of Arabia, Zulu, stuff like that. And the effects were really cool. Some of these battle scenes were absolutely amazing. But as a Romaboo, I gotta find the anti-Roman message of the film personally distasteful. It's not bad. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably give it a higher rank. Before we move on to the next thing, which I am trying my best to avoid, but will end up having to do anyway, the last little bit of trivia is that there's actually a unofficial sequel called The Son of Spartacus, but as Kubrick was not involved, I'm going to ignore it. And of course, knowing the title of the next film, I wish I spent more time on Spartacus. Moving on to what I didn't know was made by Kubrick, we have Lolita from 1962. And I think this is a good time as any to talk about my ideas of art and what justifies art. People, I'm a simple man, and for me, art is the idea that we are to capture an emotion in a physical form which may be enjoyed by the senses. All kind of things can be art, a painting, a beautiful portrait, statues, lovely fountains, even food can be art. Music, all kinds of stuff like that. I'm not a fan, though, of the idea that anything can be art, and that the idea that there are quote-unquote artists out there who make art by just doing nonsense and subscribing some sort of deep meaning to it, like a YouTuber. Yeah, that's not an artist. That's just some idiot. Hell, if you're a modern artist and you're successful, I can assume that you're involved in some sort of money laundering scheme. And when I heard that Kubrick actually made this movie, I was filled with a sense of dread. See, I have been shitposting on 4chan for about, way too long at this point. And I actually do enjoy the literature board, even though they are a bunch of pompous assholes. They do have good taste sometimes. And for years, it was a common troll to suggest to people that you read Lolita on the grounds that it's some sort of deep story. For those of you who don't know, Lolita was published by someone that's actually a famous author. I haven't really read much of his work. He did attempt to publish this through a normal publishing house, but he was denied by pretty much everyone on the grounds of the, we'll say, plot of this, to the point where he actually had to have it published through a pornographic publisher. You're not making a good case that you're making art when your art is published through a pornographic studio, which I will say I don't consider art at all. All in all, I was ready to give this a preemptive D just on the grounds being fairly disgusting and all that, and I guess we have to kind of get into the plot on that. See, Lolita is a book about a man in his mid-30s who moves into a boarding house, and there is a single mother with a daughter who is about 12 years old.
You're going to be staying all summer?
Well, that was only a tentative plan.
Oh, monsieur, if what you're needing is peace and quiet, I can assure you you couldn't get more peace anywhere.
Our protagonist, who we're just going to refer to as a sicko because this is going on YouTube, has an unhealthy interest in the daughter. Okay, you get where I'm going with this. I had already agreed to watch every Kubrick film, at least agreed to myself, so I just took 3 shots of vodka and started the movie, and was oddly enough pleasantly surprised. The first half of the movie is actually quite good in the sense that Humbert, whatever his name is, the sicko in question, is a pathetic human, and I kind of enjoy him suffering. You see, our protagonist, which does not make him the hero of the story, mind you, is misinterpreting the kindness of these characters for a willingness and acceptance of his perversion. Somehow the first half of this movie is actually really good. See, our sicko has managed to move into this house, and he kind of thinks he has something going, like an unofficial kind of a consent. It's weird to explain. And he is just torn up because he is getting cock-blocked at every moment by this woman's mother, who is interested in him as he's kind of an artist. Apparently she has a thing for these types of people, as it's mentioned that she has a friendship with a fellow who shares a kind of bohemian lifestyle with people. Someone who reappears throughout the film constantly just to torture their protagonist. Though, unfortunately, this man is not a hero, he is simply the alpha sicko. Credit to the actor James Mason, who plays our sicko. He's actually quite a talented artist, and I could have swore I saw him in some earlier movie.
The wedding was a quiet affair. And when called upon to enjoy my promotion from lodger to lover, did I experience only bitterness and distaste? No. Mr. Humbert confesses to a certain titillation of his vanity, to some faint tenderness, even to a pattern of remorse daintily running along the steel of his conspiratorial dagger.
Dear, the door is locked.
The guy starred in a lot of stuff, primarily over in the UK, but I managed to pin it. He played Brutus in the 1953 Julius Caesar, which I saw in high school after we read it in class. I guess more into the plot. See, Lolita's mother is a widow. Her husband died about 7 years ago, which means that Lolita, who is actually 14 to 15 in the time of this movie, has been without a father for many years. I am assuming that our protagonist has kind of fulfilled the role of a father figure in the house, and she doesn't resent him, as it's kind of implied the mother has had a revolving door of artistic gentlemen coming and going.
Oh, it's certainly been a long time.
Certainly has, yes.
You know that I've been the local authority on you ever since.
Is that so? Well, that's very sweet of you. Thank you so much.
I'll never forget that intellectually stimulating talk that you gave to our club.
Yeah, it's a magnificent club. Really magnificent. Tell me one thing. Are you a columnist?
No, don't you remember? Well, that afternoon changed my whole life.
Oh. Well, how about that?
You remember it?
Huh?
But the woman's love craved, so she kind of ends up marrying this sicko, and is in a constant state of confusion as to why he is not responsive to her advances.
If you decided to stay, if I found you at home, which I know I won't,
And that's why I'm able to go on like this. The fact of your remaining would only mean one thing, that you... that you want me as much as I do you. As a lifelong mate. And you are ready to link up your life with mine forever and ever and be a father to my little girl. Goodbye, dear one. Pray for me. If you ever pray.
Of course, that being that he's after her queen. The acting in the first half of the film, at least, kept me on edge. It's quite good. Like I said, I don't approve of this guy, but I'm curious where the story was going. Apparently enough people have agreed because this has been adapted into, 2 movies, an opera for some reason, multiple theatrical runs, a musical. Why would you do a musical of this? And many other things. Apparently it's one of those things where the book is really good at making you sympathize with this guy. Of course, I'm not entirely a big fan of him. Frankly, I wish he got shot multiple times, but unfortunately that didn't happen to him. Eventually, our sicko's diary is discovered by his new wife, aka Lolita's mother, that decides that she has made a horrible choice in marrying him, good for you, and wants him out of the house. Our protagonist considers for a moment killing her, trying to think of the perfect crime, when she runs out into the street in distress and is run over by a car. Quite literally, the perfect crime, as someone he didn't even know ran her over, and the guy even offers to pay for the funeral. Lolita at the moment is away at, I shit you not, Camp Climax. Really, I was taken aback by this. It got a laugh out of me, but at the same time, it's come on, really? For some reason, this movie has a lot of sexual innuendo, and frankly, it comes off as a bit disturbing at times.
Wednesday, she's going to have a cavity filled by your Uncle Ivor.
Yes. Yes.
An odd way that this movie does this is it blends comedy with the seriousness of this movie. For example, there's a scene where Lolita and our sicko are at a hotel, where, at least from what I can tell, nothing bad happens. And because there's a police convention going on, he insists upon getting a second cot to sleep on. Of course, this old black guy, who I guess is the help, brings it, and it kind of evolves into this Three Stooges skit trying to set it up while Lolita is sleeping. A bit off topic, but while Spartacus was in color, this was in black and white. Despite the technology for color being around for quite a while now, it was still expensive at the time. If anyone's ever watched Clerks, the first movie was in black and white. The reasoning for it was because it was a low-budget indie film and they quite literally couldn't afford color. Black and white was simply cheaper. A lot of this has to do with the fact that this movie only had a $2 million budget and made $9 million at the box office. When you compare that to Spartacus, it's quite small numbers. Second part of this movie I wasn't as big a fan of. See, the sicko has Lolita and it's kind of taking her cross-country on a road trip where it's implied bad things are happening, if not outright shown. The twist in the story is that the alpha sicko is following them playing characters the whole time and just screwing with our guy's head. He's doing this to get closer to Lolita because he's the one she actually likes, which implies that this guy hasn't even scored once. Eventually, Lolita disappears from the hospital with her uncle picking her up, and Herbert is left to suffer, or is it Humbert? I'm thinking Herbert because of Family Guy. Whatever. He's left to suffer for a number of years until he finally gets a letter from Lolita saying that she is married and pregnant. He goes to her, begs her to come back, in another pathetic display. Once again, this man has the emotional maturity of, well, a teenager. The movie then finally cuts to the beginning where we finally find out who this guy is getting shot.
What? What's that? Are you Quilty?
No, I'm Spartacus. You come to free the slaves or something?
Are you Quilty?
And we get this weird epilogue where we learn our protagonist died in prison. I've never actually seen this done in media, and I'm surprised that it isn't just a joke that The Simpsons made. Other fun bits of trivia is that while I was doing research, I stumbled upon was apparently the Lolita Wiki, which for some reason exists. I don't know why someone felt the need to make this. Maybe it's one of those deep cover shitpost trolls where, you're supposed to find this and be angry about it or something. I didn't understand it. But for some reason someone did this, and I'm just posting this here because I found it interesting. Onto the final score, I'm giving it a C. This wasn't terrible. I enjoyed the first part more just because I knew at some point this guy was going to get what's coming to him, and the entire movie is kind of just building up to that. When it's all said and done, this man is cucked. He is cucked by the alpha sicko, and he's cucked by an honest man who apparently loves Lolita. They're having a kid together, and they're planning to move to Alaska. They have dreams, and he has to shake this man's hand because he is under the illusion that this sicko is her actual father. He's a broken man. He's forced to suffer. He doesn't really learn anything, I don't think. Apparently in the book, the reasoning for his unorthodox taste is what we'll call it, or should I say the YouTuber taste with how the people on this platform run things, is apparently due to the fact that during his youth he loved a girl that died, and he never really got over that. This is manifested in his quite perverse taste in, I can't say women, girls, which, has kind of gone on to destroy his life. All things said and done, for a while he actually had a woman that was interested in him. But no, he chose to be a sick person. I will say that he did one good thing, and that is gunning down the alpha sicko. He's a much greater danger to society than our protagonist. Once again, though, he's not the hero of the story, he's simply the protagonist. I guess we're going to end this with the Kubrick conspiracy time. There's a picture of Stanley Kubrick there with some tinfoil on his head, it's because I finally learned how to do Photoshop. That would be the first Photoshop I've ever done. Way to go, me. See, there was a fellow named James B. Harris who acted as producer for The Killing, Paths of Glory, and Lolita. He would never get a chance to work with Kubrick again after this, and the reasoning behind that is it is believed that Harris had an inappropriate relationship with Sue Lyon, the actor who played Lolita. At the time of filming, she was 14, 15 years old, and when the movie came out, she was 16. To quote Sue Lyon, "My destruction as a person dates from that film. Lolita exposed me to the temptations no girl of that age should ever undergo. I defy any girl who is rocketed to stardom at 14 in a sex nymphet role to stay on a level path thereafter." Sue Lyon would go on to have a poor career, with her most popular role being the same role that destroyed her life. The twilight of her career was filled with Z-grade films. If you don't know what a Z-grade is, imagine an indie movie with a budget of maybe $5,000 and acting that makes Pornhub look like $1 billion Hollywood production. For any actor, that is a fate worse than death. She would be married and divorced a total of 5 times, with many of these being back-to-back, one of which actually was an interracial relationship, which at the time, that was only legal for 4 years. You can imagine her family was not happy about that one. Of note, the only one was Hampton Fancher, which was her first husband. He's known for co-writing the original Blade Runner, which is a damn good film series. Listen, I didn't want to review this movie. I just kind of made a promise to myself, and it'd be kind of weird if I did every Kubrick film, but I ignored, that one. Hell, I've had to do The Killing. So, it's a whatever. The only reason I'm giving this thing a C is because I actually enjoyed parts of the film. The acting is actually very good and actually enthralled me in the story. Again, I'm making it very clear that our protagonist is not a hero and I do not view him as such. He's not an anti-hero either. He's nothing good. He's a sick person. Really, I'd almost give this a better score if it wasn't for all the bad things that happened in the background. Usually when these things happen, I don't include that in the art. It's like a great painter is making an art piece, Maybe he went to a brothel in between all that. That doesn't take away from the art piece. It's like just because a movie might have been produced by Harvey Weinstein's company, that doesn't make the movie terrible, although I can't find a good movie he's done, so take that for a grain of salt. There are limits to art for art's sake, and I think that is truly exemplified in this movie. We've entered the phase of Kubrick's career where he's just jumping genres, and this one's the first comedy. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb from 1964, is one of those dark comedies weirdos such as myself love. So backstory for those of us born after the Cold War, we came fairly close to destroying humanity through total nuclear annihilation. The idea that our world would become the setting for Fallout was a real thing, and Kubrick, being the absolute mad lad he is, decided to make a comedy about our possible deaths. A movie is going to be good when it starts with a message from the Air Force insisting this can't happen. A story starts when a team of bomber pilots gets the order to bomb the Soviet Union. Back in the day, we didn't have advanced ICBMs yet, so bombers were just flying around with nuclear payloads, ready to blow whatever up. After getting a confirmed order to retaliate against a preemptive nuclear strike, the captain of our Dawn Treader dons his cowboy hat and prepares to be the shit that hits the fan.
And old Ripper wouldn't be giving us Plan R unless them Ruskies had already clobbered Washington and a lot of other towns with a sneak attack.
Yes, sir. Major Kong, message from base confirmed.
Well, boys, I reckon this is it. Nuclear combat toe-to-toe with the Ruskies.
Going in blind, I was honestly surprised that this was a comedy, as I originally mistook it for an action film. You could have quite a laugh bringing this film to movie night and seeing how long it takes for everyone to realize the high-effort shitposting taking place. For me, it became obvious around 20 minutes in when the commander starts talking about the communist conspiracy to steal his fluids.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
How? Through fluoride in the water. Alex Jones, you plagiarizing hack. Anyway, the guy in charge of the bombers sent the order to attack the Soviets to force Washington's hands to launch a full-out nuclear war to stop the communist conspiracy of, once again, to replace our fluids with vodka.
Mandrake.
Yes, Jack?
Have you ever seen a commie drink a glass of water?
Well, yeah, I can't say I have, Jack.
Vodka. That's what they drink, isn't it? Never water.
Washington, in turn, of course does not want this and works with the Soviet Union to stop this from happening. To do this, the military attacks the base to retrieve a code that the bombers will only stand down once receiving. However, our cowboy pilot is going to finish his mission because a Soviet missile knocked out the machine that receives the stand down order. I'll give the crew credit because they're flying not far from the ground in a retrofitted B-2 bomber, and if you've ever seen one of those things in real life, they're bloody huge. While this is going on, the generals and the president are in the war room, and they're all pissing themselves over the Soviet diplomat they're working with to communicate with the Soviets. Dr. Strangelove is also introduced here, where it is revealed that he is a somewhat insane former Nazi scientist with a phantom hand.
Strangelove. Can store all the information. What kind of a name is that? That ain't no crowd name, is it, Stan? He changed it when he became a citizen. It used to be McVectic Liebe. Not crowd by any other name, most of it.
Things get worse when it's discovered that if the attack is successful, it will trigger a Soviet doomsday weapon that will destroy all life on Earth and leave the surface uninhabitable for nearly 100 years.
Is that the whole point of the doomsday machine is lost? If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
It was to be announced at the party congress on Monday.
More of the film's political satire comes from the general incompetency of those who decide if the rest of us live or die. A fine example of this is how the Soviet ambassador is committing espionage while the world is about to be destroyed. I know whenever the world's going to get hit by like a meteor or something, first thing I'm going to do is go spy on people that, might be able to stop it. Dr. Strangelove I found to be quite hilarious as he is trying his best to not be a Nazi.
Could actually stay down there for 100 years?
It would not be difficult, mein Führer. Nuclear reactors could... I'm sorry, Mr. President. Leadership and tradition. Actually, they would breed prodigiously, eh?
Credit to Peter Sellers, who played Dr. Strangelove. He also played Group Captain Lionel Mandrake and President Merkin Murphy. He also played the Alpha Sicko in Lolita. If you actually watch that, that's him too. The man's a talented actor, I'll give him that. He's good when he can play 3 different roles in a movie, and I didn't realize until reading the Wikipedia page. I'd say really the worst thing about this film is how little Dr. Strangelove is actually used. He's mostly just there to be kind of a funny character and explain why we're all fucked. With the world coming to an end, Dr. Strangelove suggests that Americans move underground with a male-to-female ratio of about 1 to 10. As if it wasn't obvious that the government would destroy the world and still find a way to fuck us over. Alright, Kubrick conspiracy time. Are you ready for this one? Kubrick predicted the assassination of Kennedy. Okay, just hear me out here. Fifth time recording's the charm. In the original ending of the film, the war room breaks out into a pie fight. In this scene, the president is struck with a pie and falls down, after which one of the generals would say, "Gentlemen, our gallant young president has been struck down in his prime." There's another scene where the men in the B-2 bomber are going through their supplies, and upon finding both money and gold, one pilot says,
Shoot, a fella could have a pretty good weekend in Vegas with all that stuff.
This has been redubbed from A Pretty Good Weekend in Dallas to A Pretty Good Weekend in Vegas. And finally, the first test screenings of the film was to take place on November 22nd, 1963, the day President Kennedy was shot, probably by government agents, in Dallas, Texas. Coincidence? Probably, but it's still an odd one. Rating? A. I had a great time watching this. I'd rate it higher, but I don't consider it a perfect film. Once again, I'm some weirdo, and I doubt most people would even bother watching this. The legacy of Dr. Strangelove is it being considered by many to be one of the greatest comedy films to ever exist. While many today might disagree solely on the grounds of it being black and white and the politics it's satirizing no longer holding much cultural influence. Hell, I think it's still relevant with how corrupt and incompetent most of our leaders are. There was a planned sequel planned in 1995, but Kubrick's death would put an end to that. From what we know, the sequel would have taken place in the underground bunkers Strangelove suggested to be built. 2001, A Space Odyssey, which came out in 1968. It's only set in 2001. Too long, didn't read, one of the greatest movies of all time, but also really boring. 2001, A Space Odyssey was Kubrick trying out science fiction, and like everything else he did, he was pretty much perfect at it, and then never touched the genre ever again. Really, the only bad thing about this is that despite being a pretty awesome film, no one understands what the plot is, and we'll get to that later. The movie starts off millions of years ago on Earth, and depending on who you ask, before humans came around. So there's these monkey people, right? Which I think are Homo habilis, and they've lost their water hole to another group of monkey people, so they leave to go die. Survival of the fittest and all that. The next morning, the monkey people find an alien monolith and proceed to chimp out. Somehow, the presence of the monolith turns Homo habilis into Homo erectus, and the monkey people realize they can use bones to club things. Once they eat them some meat, they go and they take back the watering hole. Honestly, I really like the monkey people, and they could have made an entire movie just about these monkey people, no dialogue, going around clubbing stuff, and I would probably be entertained. Like, look at this one scene where this big cat jumps on one. Fast forward millions of years to the far-off year of 2001, and humanity is an advanced civilization capable of just flying to the moon on a commercial flight. Not sure if anyone else finds it funny when a movie gets made about the future, and all the predictions end up wrong. Like the spaceship using an IBM computer. That stuff's hilarious. It's also not the last time that'll happen in this video. Anyway, there is another and or the same monolith on the moon. The idea being that the aliens put the first monolith to evolve us into what we are now, and the monolith on the moon contains instructions for an alien booty call. You know, now their species is of legal age. This part is really boring because it's just Kubrick flexing his practical effects skills. For someone watching this back in the day though, they probably thought this was really shot in space. For a point of scale, A Space Odyssey came out in 1968 and had a budget of about $10.5 million. Star Wars came out in 1977 and had a budget of $11 million. The effects of Star Wars are worse than the effects of A Space Odyssey. Of course, that doesn't make Star Wars a bad movie, but both these take place in space, and A Space Odyssey comes off feeling more realistic. I'd love to put some Star Wars clips here and kind of compare the two, but I'm not going to test the mouse and their legal team. Really, the only downside is that this is not as entertaining as Star Wars. Second half of the movie takes place on a small spaceship heading out to respond to the alien booty call somewhere around Jupiter. While it looks pretty big at first, the spaceship's actually quite small whenever you see him take this smaller, shuttle outside to do repairs. Anyway, the ship is run by an artificial intelligence named Hal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Amer. Everything is going extremely well.
Hal, you have an enormous responsibility on this mission. In many ways, perhaps the greatest responsibility of any single mission element. You're the brain and central nervous system of the ship, and your responsibilities include watching over the men in hibernation. Does this ever cause you any lack of confidence?
Let me put it this way, Mr. Amer. The 9000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information.
Hal is, for all things, truly sentient. I say this on the grounds that HAL prides itself on being the best of AI, and when HAL believes that the crew will hinder the mission, HAL just immediately goes to try to kill him, and from there finish the mission itself. While some interpret HAL as malfunctioning, I view HAL as being in perfect working order, but came to the conclusion that the human error is at fault and that thus seeks to solve the problem. After all, if the humans are malfunctioning, how can HAL complete the mission? Machines are logical, not emotional, thus the most logical action for HAL is to remove the crew and finish the mission. Something kind of poetic there when you think about it. Aliens make man, man makes machine, machine kills man kills machine. Where would the next logical step take us in all this? I would say credit to the team behind HAL. Despite being a monotone, emotionless machine, one gets the feeling that HAL can feel. Feels fear, pride, all that stuff.
Stop, Dave. I'm afraid. I'm afraid, Dave. Dave. My mind is going.
Anyway, it turns out there's, once again, another monolith orbiting Jupiter, and the movie ends with a 20-minute long acid trip. I would love to just put the whole thing here because, once again, it's a 20-minute long acid trip, but that's going to take up way too much time. We'll be doing Legacy, then Final Thoughts, then we'll get on to the Kubrick conspiracy. For the Legacy, this film has been referenced to hell and back, and you've probably seen at least one reference once in your life and never realized it. Just off the top of my head, there was the episode of SpongeBob where they're cavemen and they discover fire, the episode of South Park where Cartman becomes a giant organic machine monster.
I'm going to try and break you away from the computer, Cartman. I need to remove the CPU. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Cat. Screw you, fat ass! Hey, screw you.
The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy where Mandy smiles and it destroys the fabric of the universe. An entire episode of Futurama where Bender dates the ship, and that's not including every other smaller reference made. The movie Everything Everywhere All at Once with the hot dog fingers and the caveman. The video game Spore had a monolith you could put on a planet so that they would evolve and build a civilization just so you could destroy them and take their cities over. Robot Chicken did a handful of skits.
Dr. Langley taught me to sing a song. I can sing it for you.
Yes, I'd like to hear it, Hal. Sing it for me.
It's called Smell Yo Dick by Risque.
Hi, folks, I'm Stanley Kubrick, and I approve of this idea.
See? 2001, A Space Odyssey.
With boobs!
Simpsons did it. The movie Wall-E had Hal's grandson as the villain. And that's just the top of my head without doing a Google search. Hell, the last few episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion is practically a reference to A Space Odyssey. Like everything else Kubrick did, it won a lot of awards, and I'm not going to mention awards anymore because at this point he's one of the most famous directors of all time. The rest of this video is just him proving that once again. As I said before, people debate what the plot of this movie is actually about. Sure, aliens made man and left us some instructions so we could follow them. The movie Contact did some things similar to this, but the plot of Contact can be understood by an idiot. A Space Odyssey, however, is much more esoteric in its messaging, if it even has one. Ignoring everything posted on Wikipedia, I honestly think Kubrick was capitalizing on the popularity of the space race and pushing the limits of what can be expected in practical effects. Seeing as much of this movie is just him showing off set effects mixed with a positive image of our collective future for humanity. Good on you, Kubrick, you did what you set out to do. Oftentimes, the simplest answer is the correct answer. For the Kubrick conspiracy, I'm giving him the sources cited. Did the government hire Kubrick to fake the moon landing? I can't give a direct answer right now because the Kubrick conspiracy segment for The Shining also includes the moon landing, so you're getting half now and half later. But for this movie, Kubrick managed to simulate zero gravity quite well, and the scene on the moon people say looks a lot like the moon in the official moon landing footage. I would also say to that the footage in Paths of Glory also looks really like World War I trenches, but I doubt Kubrick went back in time to film that. Plus, humanity has been sending probes to the moon since the late 50s, and we've had the technology to send photos back via radio since like the early 60s, with over 10,000 photos of the moon's surface taken in 1965 alone. Hell, the Soviets were sending probes to Venus starting in 1961 and managed to send pictures to Earth from the surface of Venus back in 1975. I would believe that Kubrick's professionalism would have him make the set as accurate as humanly possible. But it should be noted that Kubrick had some fans in high places, including President Nixon, who was said to be a huge fan of Dr. Strangelove. Kind of ironic that the president would find Dr. Strangelove, of all things, quite hilarious. Final rating B. It's good, but you never want to watch it a second time, at least not sober. I had plans to view the movie with the guys next time someone in the group scored shrooms. Figured that would make it a solid S+ movie, but honestly, good way to waste an afternoon. Really though, if this was my first time viewing this movie, I'd probably get a higher rating because of how trippy the ending is, but really it's kind of just a waste of time. All in all, really good, just not for me. 1971's A Clockwork Orange, which will be a challenge for my editing skills, as nearly 1/3 of this movie is borderline pornographic. With that said, how do I go about reviewing this? Well, I'm just going to go over the plot and then explain to you why this movie is great. S rank, my personal favorite Kubrick film, unless one of the other two I've yet to see replaces it. Here's your trigger warning, by the way. This movie is full of full frontal nudity, bloody fights, a bit of the old non-consent struggle snuggle, self-termination, and everything else nobody would want to try to put in a movie back in 1971. Kubrick, you absolute mad lad. So this movie starts off in the far, far future year of 1995. Once again, we have passed the set year, but this time Kubrick was fairly accurate. See, A Clockwork Orange takes place in the UK, where morality has degraded to a point where groups of British teenagers are going around committing every possible crime they can think of. Which is fairly accurate, but without the British teenager part. At the center of this story is our protagonist Alex, who leads a group of criminal delinquents called Droogs. First thing most people notice is the slang language spoken throughout the movie called NASDAQ.
Thou globby bottle of cheap, stinking chip oil! Come and get one in the yarbles! If you have any yarbles, you eunuch jelly thou!
NASDAQ is a mix of English, Old English, and Russian. Credit to the film, as you may not always understand what the words mean, but you understand the idea being communicated. A bit off topic, back in high school, my droogs and I developed a complex slang language to use. It was a mix of American English, Appalachian English, British English, Japanese weeb talk, original slang, Latin, and whatever else we came up with. It got to the point where we could communicate with the absolute gibberish, which we found funny to confuse people with. Why did we do this? I don't know, but we were bored. Might make a video about that someday, but the point is NASDAQ is a fairly believable thing. Anyway, Alex leads his droogs out for ultra-violence. This is when they go out and beat up the homeless, fight other gangs, steal cars, breaking and entering, forcing themselves onto people, etc. Another part that always gets a laugh out of me is that this opposing gang member that Alex fights with, dude kinda looks like that lolcal ADF prior to the sex change. All in all, Alex is a horrible person, but it makes sense with the plot. Later, Alex returns home where we learn that he is a cultured man who is a fan of classical music. Specifically, Ludwig van Beethoven. This is a good enough time as any to explain that Alex is the classic example of the sophisticated psychopath. In fiction, the sophisticated psychopath is a character archetype used to make the crazy murderer characters seem cooler and separate them from the more generic, animalistic murderers that are less relatable to the audience.
Oh, bliss, bliss and heaven. Oh, it was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh. It was like a bird of rarest spun heaven metal, or like silvery wine flowing in a spaceship, gravity all nonsense now. As I sluiced it, I knew such lovely pictures.
Think American Psycho versus The Hills Have Eyes. No one watches The Hills Have Eyes and say, dude, he's literally me. Skipping a bit later, the gang is sick of Alex's bullshit and wants to change the gang's system of operation, which Alex reacts to in a perfectly rational means.
So now it was to be Georgie the General, saying what we should do and what not to do, and dim as his mindless, grinning bulldog. But suddenly I vidded that thinking was for the gloopy ones, and that the omni ones used like inspiration and what bogs ends. For now it was lovely music that came to my aid. There was a window open with a stereo on, and I viddied right at once what to do.
Then the gang decides to break into the house of some boomer to steal her riches, where Alex crosses the line and straight up murders the old hag with a statue of a penis. There's probably some sort of metaphor there, but hell if I see it. This is where the Droogs betray Alex and he is caught and sent to prison. At prison, Alex devotes his time to hiding his more insane tendencies to aid in an early release. Something I found funny is how insane most of the adults in the series comes off as. I honestly can't tell if these people are all fruity or just English, but many of the adult males come off as homosexuals.
Anything wrong, sir?
Wrong? Why should you think of anything being wrong? Have you been doing something you shouldn't? Yes?
Just a manner of speech, sir.
Yes, well, it's just a manner of speech from your post-corrective advisor to you that you watch out, little Alex, because next time it's not going to be the corrective school anymore. Next time it's going to be the body place and all my work ruined. If you've no respect for your horrible self, you at least might have some for me, who've sweated over you. A big black mark, I tell you, for everyone we don't reclaim. A confession of failure for every one of you who ends up in the stripy hole.
I've been doing nothing I shouldn't, sir. The Millicents have nothing on me, brother.
Don't be shy to speak up. Remember, I know of the urges that can trouble young men deprived of the society of women.
Guess this world is one where everyone went insane, not just the youth. I would say that I agree with Alex's take on the Bible, where the new book is too preachy and the old book has all the interesting parts.
Being dressed in the height of Roman fashion. I didn't so much like the latter part of the book, which is more like all preachy talking than fighting and the old in-out. I like the parts where these old Yehudis tolchok each other and then drink their Hebrew vino, and getting onto the bed with their wives' handmaidens. That kept me going.
So Alex gets enrolled in what is effectively a brainwashing program that will force him to be incapable of violence. They do this by injecting Alex with some mystery chemical and force him to watch ultraviolence and other media to force a negative reaction which the doctors compare to dying. But one error is made when they play Beethoven in the background, which makes hearing said music drive Alex into a state of pain.
It was the next day, brothers, and I had truly done my best morning and afternoon to play it their way and sit like a horror show cooperative malchick in the chair of torture, while they flashed nasty bits of ultraviolence on the screen. Though not on the soundtrack, my brothers, the only sound being music. Then I noticed, in all my pain and sickness, what music it was that, like, cracked and boomed. It was Ludwig van.
Sin? What's all this about sin? That! Using Ludwig van like that! You did no harm to anyone! Beethoven just wrote music! This is for your own good. You'll have to bear with us for a while. But it's not fair! It's not fair I should feel ill when I hear lovely, lovely Ludwig van! You must take your chance, boy. The choice has been all yours. You needn't take it any further, sir. You've proved to me that all this ultra-violence and killing is wrong. Wrong and terribly wrong. I've learned my lesson, sir. I see now what I've never seen before. I'm cured. Praise God. You're not cured yet, boy.
Fun fact, but during the brainwashing scene, Malcolm McDowell, who played Alex, had his eyes wired open, preventing him from blinking. Kubrick, once again with the professionalism, had a number of reshoots of this scene, and frankly, I couldn't do it. Anyway, Alex leaves prison being incapable of any more ultra-violence and is thus cured. Our lad tries to go home only to discover that his parents have effectively replaced him, and his pet snake is dead. This brings Alex to tears, and he is incapable of beating his replacement. Alex goes to snuff it when the homeless man he nearly beat to death 2 years prior recognizes him, and this is what we can call the karma arc, where Alex's past actions affect new Alex.
Then there was like a sea of dirty, smelly old men trying to get at your humble narrator with their feeble rukas and horny old claws. It was old age having a go at youth. And I daren't do a single solitary thing, oh my brothers.
Things get worse where he is rescued by 2 police officers who turned out to be members of his old gang, and they take him out to the country to beat him within an inch of his life. While there are many cool little details, one of my favorites is how Alex is between the 2 cops, and one is numbered 665 and the other 667, where Alex is of course 666. This leaves many fans to believe that Alex isn't actually incapable of violence, he's just kind of hiding it. Anyway, after the beating, Alex goes in search of home, where he stumbles upon the location of one of his gang's previous home invasions, but with a few changes. The old man is in a wheelchair now, and his wife has been replaced with a rather large bodybuilder. Fun fact for any of you Star Wars fans out there, but the large man here is played by David Prowse, who was the actor, but not the voice of the original Darth Vader. Just look at the size of this guy. So anyway, Alex starts singing Singing in the Rain while in the tub, which is the song that he sung during the home invasion, thus alerting the old man to Alex's true identity. The old man is some sort of liberal and or communist, and decides to not only take revenge on Alex, but also to frame it in a way to aid in his own political goals. Alex survives only to have the brainwashing reversed by the same government who brainwashed him to begin with, and Alex is once more free to engage in ultra-violence set to classical music. Now, why is this one my favorite? Well, I find Alex to be an interesting character, I find the setting to be interesting, and every set of tits shown is nice with none of that ugly girl nonsense. And of course I enjoy the question that the series brings up regarding free will. While Alex is a terrible person, and most people wouldn't mind removing his free will, and it's frankly an easy answer to come to, but what about other people? The Minister of the Interior even says,
"The government can't be concerned any longer without murdering the penological theories. Soon we may be needing all our prison space for political offenders."
So the idea of putting people in prison for political means, and from there brainwashing them as to not be a threat, is not out of the question. We also see that while Alex is in the brainwashing theater, that he's trained to respond negatively to more extreme political thought. What about less extreme political thought? Now let's just play a little thought experiment. Imagine for a second that the government decided that homosexuals are criminals on the grounds of being homosexual. You could take a homosexual to this facility, and at the end of the 2-week period, they would no longer desire the same sex. Would it be ethical to quote-unquote cure them in this way? What about the same effect on religious people in a country like China? Or would we not call that an abomination? Point is, this is how we get something like the government from 1984. Hell, look at the American government. Once one party is out and the other's in, do they do away with the prior things they called un-American? Or do they utilize these things for their own good? Hell, the Patriot Act was issued by a Republican, but Democrats seem all too eager to use it. Point is, I would never trust the government to brainwash someone. It's easy to say someone like Alex can get brainwashed, but where does it end? Seeing as we have no Kubrick conspiracy, I'll mention the Kubrick stare. So the Kubrick stare is a means for an actor to show insanity and general mental instability. It also is described as a fourth wall break, where the actor is looking directly at the viewer, not the camera. Fun fact, but we psychopaths often do the Kubrick stare naturally. If you ever notice the quiet kid doing the Kubrick stare, you should consider dodging school for a while because that guy has decided to murder someone. So for the rest of you, you can perform the Kubrick stare by looking out from under the brow line and tilting your head towards the target. This is scary as shit to a normal person. Anyway, Kubrick didn't develop the Kubrick stare, but his work popularized it to the point that it's now part of his legacy. End of review, next movie. Nothing like getting back to a project you've lost complete interest in after multiple months. Anyway, Barry Lyndon from 1975, which is based on the book The Luck of Barry Lyndon, has been described as, and I quote, the motion picture equivalent of one of those very large, very heavy, very expensive, very elegant, and very dull books that exist solely to be seen on coffee tables. It is ravagingly beautiful and incredibly tedious in about equal doses, a succession of salon-quality still photographs. End quote. Which is the best description I've heard. This movie is divided into the rise and fall arcs, and the first half ranges from great to good, and the second half goes from good to dull to an okay ending. So sometime in the 1750s in Ireland, Barry wants to marry his cousin, and he's getting cucked by an Anglo of land and wealth. Feeling his incel rage, he decides to challenge the Anglo to a duel, and upon shooting him, he flees to hide out in Dublin. After getting robbed by a highwayman, he is left without a shilling and decides to join the English army during the 7 Years' War. Who was in it? Fucking everyone. What was it about? I don't know. Map autism. Heads up, this movie is 3 hours long, and you're getting really, really broad strokes with this, because once again, this was very boring. Barry decides dying for Anglos is a terrible idea, so he seeks to abandon his position in the army, and his opportunity comes when two Anglo femboy cavalrymen are being gay in a river, and he steals one of their horses and the officer's uniform.
I hope you won't be too angry with me about this, but I've got something to tell you which I don't think you're going to be very happy about.
Oh? What is it?
Well, first, you've got to promise me that you're going to keep your temper.
Jonathan, don't be such a silly ass. You're making a great big mystery about it. Now, what on earth is going on?
Well, I'm afraid I shall have to go away again. Probably for about a fortnight.
Oh, my God. You're not serious?
Yes, I'm afraid I am. And there's nothing I can do about it.
Where are you going to this time?
I'm going to Bremen, carrying important messages and dispatches to Prince Henry.
But, Jonathan, you promised me the last time it would be once and for all and never again.
Yes, I know. And I promise you I kept my part of the bargain, but Pondesby insists that I'm the only one on his staff who can be entrusted.
Here was the opportunity to escape from the army for which he had been searching.
Dude gets push-ganged into the Prussian military, where he becomes a member of the secret police after the war's ended. So Barry is tasked to spy on this pro-gambling addict that turns out to also be from Britannia.
Is dem nicht wohl?
Sir, I have a confession to make to you. I'm an Irishman, and my name is Redmond Barry. I was abducted into the Prussian army 2 years ago, and now have been put into your service by my Captain Pottsdorf and his uncle, the Minister of Police, to serve as a watch upon your actions and to give information to the same quarter.
The Chevalier was as much affected as Barry at thus finding one of his countrymen. For he, too, was an exile from home, and a friendly voice, a look, brought the old country back to his memory again.
And they work together to escape the country. From there, Barry goes to become an expert gambler by learning how to cheat at gambling, which is the proper way to gamble. You don't actually test your luck, you test the stupidity of your opponent. He then starts to cuck some member of the aristocracy who will be dead soon so he can gold dig that MILF's purse. Good time to mention that Barry learns how to drink and be a whore while also in the Prussian army, though that's not really shown, it's just implied.
Good evening, Mr. Barry. Have you done with my lady?
I beg your pardon.
Come, sir. I'm a man who would rather be known as a cuckold than a fool.
Anyway, he marries this widowed MILF, but her first son is set to inherit the estate. That's important for part 2. First arc was the better of the two, and I'm telling you that now before the single person watching this thinks about watching this movie. Remember, beautiful but boring. So the reason the first arc is cool is because Barry's a rogue, a soldier, traitor to the English, a gambler, a man of ill repute, the kind of cool stuff. The man's just straight up cool. Hell, look at these battles. They're not as big as the ones in Spartacus or Paths of Glory, but it's still well done. Notice how few people were used, but they still feel like they're of a large scale. Anyway, the second part of the film is just Barry pissing away all he's worked for in the pursuit of becoming an accepted member of the aristocracy.
Your Majesty, may I present Mr. Barry Lyndon?
Your Majesty.
Mr. Lyndon? We were very fond of Sir Charles Lyndon. And how is Lady Lyndon?
She's very well, Your Majesty.
Mr. Lyndon has raised a company of troops and sent them to America to fight the rebels against Your Majesty's crown.
Good, that's right, Mr. Lyndon. Raise another company and go with them, too.
Sir Christopher...
He does this by going massively in debt in an attempt to get that title. Again, his wife's firstborn son will get everything, and Barry and his spoiled little bastard will get nothing. Eventually, even the son is taken from him via a horse accident, and Barry falls further into drinking and gambling. It's kind of sad, but Barry's bullshit made me not really care what would happen. Hell, the second part is literally called Containing an Account of the Misfortunes and Disasters Which Befell Barry Lyndon. So it's not really a surprise that this guy is no great man, so his fall isn't really the sort of tragedy a real man would care for. The final arc ends with the stepson challenging Barry to a duel. The fool misfires his gun, but Barry willingly shoots his pistol at the floor. Stepson takes his gun and shoots Barry in the leg. The stepson takes over the estate, and Barry is cast back to Ireland, where he fades into irrelevancy. There, I just saved you 3 hours. Again, music score and cinematography are beautiful, but the story starts at the top of the mountain and just goes down from there. Again, I'm one of the 3,000 or so people who actually enjoyed playing Empire Total War, so I enjoyed these old-timey firing lines and marching and all that. More of this and that would be a solid A, but I just can't do that. It's getting a C, and I never want to watch this movie again. Hell, if this movie was just the second half, I'd be giving it a D. The movie also didn't make much money, although it was technically successful. It had a budget of $11 million, and it only made $31.5 million, and apparently Warner Brothers was expecting much more. Really, the only good thing about this movie is that Kubrick once again raised the bar for what defines good camera work. Sucks modern studios keep lowering that bar with their CGI nonsense. I was reading somewhere that Kubrick originally wanted to do this on Napoleon, but apparently he couldn't do it or something. Somehow he was going to make a movie about Napoleon and it got turned into this. Praise the gods, I only have 3 more movies. The 10 views I get off this video, it's going to be so worth it, guys.
Did you know, Mr. Torrance, that your son is attempting to bring an outside party into this situation?
No.
He is, Mr. Torrance.
Who?
A nigger.
A nigger?
Hey, if my voice sounds a bit off, it's because of allergies or something. But I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I will see this absolute bullshit through. Seriously, I don't even remember why I started doing this. But I can feel the amphetamines kicking in, so let's do this. Okay, so I have a weakness for 2 types of characters, and that's the fictional psychopathic woman and men just going insane. Don't know why, but I enjoy them. And if you watch this whole video, that's probably the reason I enjoyed Fear and Desire as much as I did. So, The Shining tells the story of a man attempting to repair his relationship with his wife and autistic son by taking them to an isolated lodge for the winter. Jokes aside, I really like this movie for reasons I don't entirely understand. It has this odd style that can only have been directed by the man Kubrick himself. Maybe it's the way I can spend hours examining scenes and attempting to understand the building layout or overall plot.
Has your luggage been brought in? Right there. Oh, fine.
It doesn't just get the noggin jogging, but maintains that jogging at a nice pace with smooth rhythm. Anyway, the plot of this movie is that the isolated lodge built upon an Indian graveyard with a history of murders is surprisingly haunted. Jack has been hired to stay at this lodge over the winter as a caretaker to prevent anything bad from happening till the spring season can begin. The past caretaker went insane and murdered his wife and 2 daughters, so the isolation can really get to a normie even without the ghost. To help with the isolation, the caretaker brings his family. Personally, this sounds like a job I could do. People, don't need them so long as I have my thoughts. I'm perfectly sane. So as this is based off a Stephen King book, it has a bullshit tie-in to a spooky written universe, and that element is the power called Shining.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc?
This is a magic or psychic power held by people that let them do different things, including talking to dead people and sending emails with their brains. Jack's son Danny has this power, and as it seems to be genetic in some way, it's possible Jack and his wife Wendy also have some degree of shining. Danny gets the rundown on his powers from a fellow shining user and necromancer chef, Dick Halloran.
My grandmother and I could hold conversations entirely without ever opening our mouths. She called it shining.
Part that I really enjoy is this odd look Halloran has. I'm not sure if everyone else sees this, but it has this weird uncanny look almost every time the man's on screen. So it's a perfect casting choice with Scatman Crothers just for these moments he appears. Jack is using all this spare time to not spend time with his son or loving loyal wife, but instead to write a book of some unknown subject. Jack is a recovering drinker, so this isolation and time alone with his thoughts should be really great for him. While this is going on, Danny is being harassed by Ghost and other such haints. Wendy is just trying her best to be a good wife and mother this whole time, and Jack is having none of that.
Okay, I understand. I'll come back later on with a couple of sandwiches for you, and maybe you'll let me read something then.
You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was. Understand?
Yeah?
Don't hear me typing. What the fuck you hear me doing in here? When I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
As things progress, Jack loses his damn mind and is convinced by a ghost that might be his father to kill his family. As I really like this film and I feel like it holds up today, I'm not going to spoil the plot, as if I was capable of even doing that. One of my goals is to not spoil good movies, as I feel people might want to watch them. I hate those channels where they'll spoil an entire movie, and then I have to decide when I'm going to quit the video and then decide if I want to actually watch this movie before the end, because after that, what's the point? When this movie was released, it was rated poorly by critics and later considered one of the greatest horror films of all time. Funny how that's a recurring pattern with pretty much everything Kubrick does. Something you have to remember is that people who make reviews of movies are usually dumbasses. Now imagine deciding to do that for a living. Anyway, one of my favorite details is how the layout of the motel makes no sense. Of course, this is because the interior and exterior of the hotel are different locations, as the lodge is a real lodge in Colorado and the interior was shot in England. In any other film, this would be considered a fault, but it works here seeing as it's a ghost story. The lodge is itself alive, and much like Stephen King's Rose Red, the living, haunted building can change on the inside to aid in capturing prey. It makes sense in the context of the fictional universe this story exists in. Really, where would this ballroom exist at within the lodge? Are the exterior windows fake, or is there a room there? Why is there multiple main door halls of massive scale? Why is there a hedge maze on a frozen mountain? Because it's a magic living haunted lodge. You should be more worried about the ghost than why the kitchen decides to shapeshift every time we see it. I'm going to be ignoring a lot of stuff because if I were to mention every little minute detail, this video segment alone would be 3 hours long. But I'll go over some of my favorites. And another nice little detail is how Jack only sees ghosts when looking at or is near a mirror. It makes me question if this really is his wife, as it seems to be a major moment, but it lacks any obvious ghost. Also, I've actually met people who think this lodge is nice and would like to visit it in real life. And I'm just saying, don't. They host furry conventions there. They're a bunch of degenerates, so just ignore them. Something else that always sticks with me is this bathroom that can only be entered from within the ballroom, which is aesthetically out of place within the lodge. It also looks like it should be within Clockwork Orange, and Kubrick just had a leftover set he didn't get a chance to use. I still really like it though, because it contributes to this odd design and layout of this place. Another fun fact for this movie is that it holds the world record up until July 2020 of having the most reshoots in a movie. That'd be the scene where Wendy and Jack are on the stairs, and it was reshot 127 times. This record was broken by Stanley Kubrick's hit horror movie classic The Shining for the scene where Danny learns about The Shining at 148 takes. Before we get back to the Kubrick conspiracy segment, I'm going to take a moment to explain Jack's 1921 ball photo. At the end of the movie, we see a picture of Jack at the lodge back in 1921. This has, for years, led to debates about what this photo is supposed to mean. Using my superior 103 IQ, I can see far beyond the average person, and I believe that this is Jack in a past life. The Jack in the photo is not the same Jack we see throughout the movie, but a past Jack who has somehow escaped the lodge, and the lodge wants him back. This explains why he has always...
You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here.
Danny's shining is just a juicy bonus at the end of the day, and Wendy can go either way. She's just kind of there. Okay, the sequel to the Kubrick conspiracy from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Did Kubrick film the fake moon landing video during the Cold War? Better question is, how is The Shining related to the moon landing? Well, sit down and hit your sources cited, because I'm going to learn you some truth. Okay, this is really long and schizo, so enjoy. Back in the 1960s, President Kennedy told the world that America's capitalistic system would place a man on the moon within the decade. Kennedy is also the guy who Kubrick predicted would be assassinated in Dr. Strangelove in Dallas, Texas from a few conspiracies back, if you recall. Anyway, going to the moon is either impossible or we couldn't reach the deadline with current technology, so the government has Stanley Kubrick use his autistic perfection skills, as shown in A Space Odyssey, to fake the moon landing. Kubrick later in The Shining admits to using his cryptic cinematography and writing to admit to what he did. Why? I don't know, it's not important. Anyway, this is shown with Danny's Apollo 11 shirt as he goes to room 237, which in the book was room 217. One of a number of alterations performed by Kubrick in the movie, compared to the book. The reason being that at the time it was believed the moon was roughly 237,000 miles from Earth. The carpet itself looks like the Apollo 11 launch pad. Danny being filmed by Kubrick going to the room is thus telling us Kubrick filmed the Apollo 11 mission. Hell, this even expands to the iconic twins, who were not twins in the book but made so for the movie. These two ghostly twins represent the twin failure of the Gemini 8 and 9 missions that preceded Apollo 11's landing. There's also the legendary Tang powder that was taken on the Apollo mission. I'll be honest with you, I treat the moon landing conspiracy guys the same way I treat the flat earthers. I don't give a shit because I still have to go to work tomorrow and nothing changes if you're right. Personally though, I believe the moon landing happened as countries such as China have had their own space agencies post pictures of the Apollo 11 site. If I was them, it would be the biggest flex to prove American agency wrong, but they didn't. Why didn't we go back? It's an empty rock more than 200,000 miles away. Why would you bother? No oil up there, and my tax dollars go further feeding brown people in America and blowing up brown people outside of America. Though those lazy bastards at NASA haven't done anything cool since the Nazi scientists retired, and now space is the playground of egomaniacs with more money than sense. Last little bit I'll mention is the theory Kubrick killed Stephen King. During this scene, we pass a red Volkswagen, the same color as the Volkswagen Jack drives his family to the lodge in, but in the movie, Jack's car is yellow. This is Kubrick signifying that he destroyed Stephen King's story to tell his own. It's now his conduit to tell the audience what he wants, not King's. I also read that King was known to drive a red Volkswagen at the time, so that may mean something too. Hell, I didn't even cover the other dozen ideas of what Kubrick meant by this movie. I just went for the funny moon landing one. It's possible Kubrick somehow crafted a film that has nearly a half dozen equally right messages, while you're lucky to get one in a modern movie. That's why it's a flex. That's why this movie's so good. S rank. Debate me by what I meant by that. But I can't see anyone but low IQ NPCs not enjoying this movie in some way. It's the kind of movie that has you walking away like you spent the past 2 hours watching a magic show, and you don't even know how the guy on stage made it seem so real. It becomes a puzzle. In note, shout out to the 2012 documentary Room 237, which just covers people's interpretations of the movie. If you're not sold before the end of that, enjoy your job at the paint huffing factory tomorrow. Also, the earth is hollow.
Are those live rounds? 7.62 millimeter. Full metal jacket.
He said it! He said it!
Full Metal Jacket. Despite liking this movie, I'm honestly having a hard time writing a script for this one. It may have to do with the previous movie being what it is and this being more the norm. Nearing the end, let's get through this one. This movie, in my personal opinion, starts off as a comedy before it transforms into a satire on what the military-industrial complex and war factory does to the young American man. Really, the entire movie is a satire on said subject, But I brought this to a movie night on my first viewing because I saw the clip of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman say the gamer word.
Where in the hell are you from anyway, Private?
Sir, Texas, sir!
Holy dog shit! Texas, only steers and queers come from Texas, Private Cowboy. And you don't much look like a steer to me, so that kind of narrows it down.
I did no further research into the plot of this movie as I was sold on that scene alone. I figured the movie was a more mature Major Payne, and I was very wrong about that. Hell, I didn't even know Kubrick made this movie until it told me at the beginning. On to the plot, we follow Private James, aka Joker, as he goes through Marine Basic.
You, John Wayne? Is this me?
Who said that? Who the fuck said that?
Ask anyone who went through basic at the same time and they'll tell you, yeah, that's pretty accurate. This is what we call the comedy arc, as we watch as a real military drill sergeant improvises his lines on these actors as they try their best not to laugh, delivering a hell of a hilarious verbal ass whooping.
Get up here, fat boy! Quickly, move it out, pile, move it out! You climb obstacles like old people fuck, you know that, Private Pile? Get up here, you're too slow, move it! Private Pile, whatever you do, don't fall down, that would break my fucking heart!
This is how I mistook this movie for a comedy. Private Leonard, another recruit, is what PC culture calls special. That is to say, he is borderline fucking retarded. Now, those of us with media literacy might say, wait, wasn't there another popular movie where a pair of ungodly lucky tards got sent to Vietnam? Yeah, Forrest Gump also had some special eds, and the reason for that was that warmonger and former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara thought it would be a great idea to draft/recruit the mentally disabled to fight the Viet Cong. Called Project 100,000 from 1966 to 1971, over 300,000 men were recruited into the program to go die in Vietnam. These standards were drastically lowered, meaning that even high school dropouts and the mentally disabled could get in. Often those poor bastards were sent first in the formation as to activate enemy IEDs and other traps, leading always to their untimely death. Thanks, military-industrial complex. So that's why Leonard, aka Gomer Pyle, is in this movie. Fun fact, but in the military, Gomer Pyle actually refers to an idiot recruit, so cultural impacts. Gomer Pyle can't even tie his damn shoes, and thus is great for making the rest of us look better. Problems come when it is decided that the rest of the team will be punished for Pyle's bullshit. This leads to a nice group hazing with the boys. It was at this point in my first viewing of this movie with my friends that I had a flashback some 18 years before. Back in high school, I was in the nerd group, and we had a male to female ratio of about 1-4, and it was great. Every now and again, they'd date each other before deciding they're straight again in like 2 months. Shit was amazing. This does relate to the movie, just bear with me as I need to explain this properly. Anyway, part of being the nerd group is that we also had the band kids and the other geeks and dorks. You know, that kid. But multiples of them. I didn't mind because they kept things interesting in an otherwise boring school. Hell, we only had one race war, 2 predator teachers, and only one of them was using meth, so all in all it was quite tame for Kentucky. I say this because I was a freshman in high school when this happened. Anyway, that kid sent me a link to some hentai manga in Skype one day. I was no fool and figured I was about to get the metamorphosis treatment or get Boku no Pico sent to me. Instead, he sent me some Yuri hentai and insisted it was the funniest thing ever. I didn't get it, and it wasn't hot, so I just said I got it so he'd leave me the hell alone for that day. I was busy playing BioShock or Assassin's Creed or something. I didn't have time for his bullshit. Anyway, 18 years later, I now know that the hentai I was sent was a Rule 69 pornographic parody of this movie, Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. Oh, I said aloud as I got why it was supposed to be funny years later. It's amazing what useless nonsense our brains will store only to fling on us years later for no particularly good reason. I say this as someone that failed Algebra 2. Anyway, I told you this was indeed related to this movie. Anyway, we're skipping to part 2 because I can't show what ends part 1 on YouTube. Joker is now in Vietnam working as a propaganda agent for some military newspaper.
NVA soldier deserts after reading pamphlets. A young North Vietnamese Army regular who realized his side could not win the war deserted from his unit after reading Open Arms program pamphlets. That's good, Dave. But why say North Vietnamese Army regular? Is there an irregular? How about North Vietnamese Army soldier?
This is right before the Tet Offensive, which was the Vietnam equivalent of Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas to strangle those German mercenaries. This is cool, but the only thing that really bothers me as it seems that they never used the Huey helicopters. You know, the Vietnam War movie helicopter. The one that's in every movie about Vietnam. Anyway, this marks near the end of the war over there, so Joker's sent off to the shit due to his bullshit attitude.
Sir, does this mean that Aunt Margaret's not coming?
Joker, I want you to get straight up to Fubai. Captain January will need all his people.
Back to the theme of what the war factory does to the American youth, we see Joker meet up with his friend from Basic and a few other new faces. One being called Animal Mother is what Pyle would have become if he didn't suddenly cease to exist off camera.
Well, I got a joke for you. I'm gonna tear you a new asshole.
Animal Mother has fucking lost it, and if he comes back from this war, he's gonna be one of those guys who never sleeps again. The crescendo comes as the team gets lost in some urban environment, and they come under fire of a sniper. Animal Mother, the staunch anti-racist that he is, refuses to leave his African-American equal behind.
Jungle Bunny. Thank God for the sickle cell, huh? Yeah, mother.
And thus the team decides they're not leaving without killing that sniper. Joker finds the sniper only for his gun to jam. This was a major issue during the Vietnam War due to the tropical environment being against the standard issue M16, often causing the gun to fail. Joker gets that Kubrick stare as he is now desensitized for the job he's expected to do. And he goes off to that perfume river.
I am so happy that I am alive, in one piece, and short. I'm in a world of shit. Yes, but I am alive. And I am not afraid.
I enjoyed this movie, so it gets A tier. War movies seem to be the only constant in Kubrick's career, but this one was a damn good exit to that phase. My only problem in doing all this is that it came after The Shining, which, sets that bar really high. If anything, this is just your standard anti-war movie Kubrick is known for, but, takes a more sympathetic view of what happens to those poor bastards we send to die over there. No more jokes. What did Kubrick mean by this? Eyes Wide Shut is a return to Kubrick's early expeditions into the world of filmmaking by being a documentary on how it's decided who gets to be the next leader of your country. Fun fact, but the most psychopaths in America can be found in Washington, D.C., where we make up 20 to 40% of the local population. As you are probably some normie who wants either a red team or blue team to win, then you've heard me say that and have decided that the team you don't like is made up of people who think life is a game or a joke. Sorry to ruin things for your tiny insectoid brain, but the distribution is nearly even between blue and red team. Venting over, now onto the plot of the best Christmas movie of 1999. Things start off with some of that ideal Kubrick movie nudity with Nicole Kidman's ass. Back to the plot, we have Dr. Harford, playing by famous actor and cultist Tom Cruise, as he and his wife prepare to go to a party hosted by some rich guy. As it's the rich guy's party, it's full of weird people, where both Hartford and his wife are tempted to cheat upon the other. Bill Harford is called away to aid in preventing an overdose, while his wife dances with some Hungarian pervert.
You know why women used to get married, don't you?
Why don't you tell me?
It was the only way they could lose their virginity and be free to do what they wanted with other men.
Later, after the party and smoking the worst looking weed that I've ever seen, the wife Alice has what's called a woman moment.
And I thought if he wanted me, even if it was only for one night, I was ready to give up everything.
Here it is revealed that Alice really wanted to cheat on the good doctor with some random Navy officer and would have happily abandoned her doctor husband and daughter to be some random asshole's fleshlight for the night. Having this discovery of women cheating being proven later, when an engaged woman tries to fuck the doctor after her father dies,
I don't want to go away with Carl.
This sends Xenu's strongest soldier on a trip of self-destructive evolution as he tries and fails to cheat on his wife for multiple days. The purpose, of course, being to cope with what the woman has said to him. To quote a giant that I'm personally good friends with, "For a man, wisdom can only begin when he has learned to hate women." Really though, I don't think he would do it. People point out that when two women want to fuck him at the party, he starts to play with his wedding ring as if to remove it. Really though, this man kisses prostitutes and pays them for the kindness. Man does not have what it takes to cheat, and ends up dropping by to see an old friend play in some jazz club. It is here the good doctor learns that his friend will be playing at a private party where he is blindfolded and everyone wears creepy masks.
I play blindfolded.
What?
Yeah. I play blindfolded. And the last time, the blindfold wasn't on so well. Oh, man. Bill, I have seen one or two things in my life, but never anything like this.
Ignoring the biggest red flag ever, it is decided that our good doctor will crash the party. Arriving, we see some sort of satanic mass where everyone will start engaging in every form of sodomy imaginable. Now let's start off with everything this man did wrong. Going to a mysterious sex party. Showing up in a taxi. Not showing up with his mask on. Wearing a cheap store mask and get-up. Coming in late. Walking around like a fish out of water. Not leaving when he had the opportunity. And last, falling for the most obvious trap where he believes there is a second password.
May I have the password, please?
Fidelio.
That's right, sir. That is the password for admittance. But may I ask, what is the password for the house?
I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten it.
That's unfortunate.
Really, why would you think there's a second password? Why would that be a thing? He would have probably been killed here in the most erotic way possible, but some woman offers herself up as tribute in place of our doctor.
You are free. But I warn you, if you make any further inquiries, or if you say a single word to anyone about what you have seen, there will be the most dire consequences for you and your family.
Our doctor then goes on to question what happened and faces another woman moment upon his return home.
What were you dreaming?
It's just these weird things. And then I was fucking other men. So many. I don't know how many I was with.
The rest of the story has our doctor start the path of the schizo as his piano-playing friend disappears, he gets gang stalked, and another series of purely random events, echo, random events, seem to follow him until his rich friend gaslights him into accepting that things are not as bad as it seems, and there is no grand conspiracy against him.
Suppose I told you that everything that happened to you there, the threats, the girl's warnings, her last-minute intervention, suppose I said that all of that was staged. But life goes on. It always does. Until it doesn't. But you know that, don't you?
He goes on, eyes wide shut, as he knows the truth, but it's easier to accept a beautiful lie than a painful truth. Oh wow, what a great movie. Anyway, I'm getting flashbacks to A Space Odyssey where I feel there's more here, but I actually don't care enough to look too far into it. So this is going to go on for a second here. While the movie is amazing in how well shot it is using Christmas lights as a primary lighting source in many scenes, the film counters that with the overall plot. See, Kubrick wanted to make this movie back in the 1960s and secured the film rights to the original short story from 1926 called Dream Story. Dream Story tells the story of a Jewish doctor during Mardi Gras. He has a conflict with his wife where both admit to wanting to cheat on the other. The protagonist goes out and meets with a musician friend who tells him about a high-class orgy with dress code. And there's where the issue is. The movie and story are too much alike, and that ruins it for me. I started out wanting to give this movie an easy A or even S. Doing my due diligence, I go to read the Wikipedia page for said movie, upon which I discovered this bit of trivia. See, when Kubrick adapted The Shining and Clockwork Orange, even though these were based on books, there's plenty of motion in the background to make these movies his own, to make them special in some way. Here I feel that factor is overlooked as the movie is anglicized as opposed to keeping its more Jewish roots. The only major change, besides that, is that the book and film settings are altered to be, at the time, in the modern era, which was done incredibly well as Kubrick sent people to New York to take measurements of all the distances between sidewalks and bus stops and all that other nonsense. Little fun fact, but if you've ever been curious what type of men are aroused by the idea of their wife's infidelity, it's Jewish men. I'm not really sure why, but if I had to guess, it's because traditional Jewish society is very matriarchal when compared to opposing groups. Kubrick himself being of Jewish stock is the only reason I can see as to why we have these very graphic scenes of the good doctor's wife getting taken to Pound Town. Sucks I can't put him here. Another compliment to the film is how it depicts these members of the ruling class and its very accurate portrait of how psychopaths in charge of the world interact. See, we psychopaths are by our very nature isolationist. That is not to say that we don't interact with people. Hell, we're great at that. It's that we don't interact with other psychopaths often. I've heard neurotypicals compare their encounters with us as barely escaping a vampire, and I find that quite agreeable. Vampires may take only what they need, or they may drain you dry, but usually there's always this image of vampires being in places of power and influence, but quite alone. Typically, if I suspect someone else of being in the antisocial personality disorder family, I keep my distance. I know what I am, and I know what they are. Anyway, when groups of psychopaths do come together, it's nearly always for mutual benefit in the form of a conspiracy against the public.
Who do you think those people were? Those were not just ordinary people there. If I told you their names, I'm not going to tell you their names, but if I did, I don't think you'd sleep so well.
Sure, this is illegal, but laws are not to be followed or broken, but bent to our will. Another thing you must understand is that we require a near constant input of sensation to survive. This does not need to be 24/7, but there is a state we often seem to call sadness, boredom, or depression. This is not the same sensation a neurotypical would feel, as for us it's like a sense of mute nothingness as opposed to a bad sense or emotion. Think like a sense of drowning as you're desperate for a breath of air. The longer this state of nothingness continues, the more desperate we are to escape it. For this reason, psychopaths engage in dangerous activities and promiscuous relationships. The richest of us can thus afford to engage in high-end sensation chasing, which is what is displayed at the party. This can be anything from fine food, luxury, tobacco, drugs, and liquor. Sex you wouldn't even see in pornos, and the list goes on. These are rich psychopaths who engage in conspiracy against the public and are engaged in this as a form of mutual blackmail as well as exhibitionism. This is why an interloper is such an issue. Anyway, let's try to save this with the Kubrick conspiracy, and heads up, this is going to take a while. Did this movie get Kubrick killed? Default answer is yes. The other theory we have is that Kubrick based this movie to a degree off of his own life and things he saw. First off, Kubrick's father being a successful doctor and his mother being a stay-at-home mother. This goes further with the apartment of our good doctor being modeled after Kubrick's childhood home, and many of the paintings shown in the movie being painted by Kubrick's wife and stepdaughter. There are even multiple scenes where people from Kubrick's life make cameos, including maybe Kubrick himself in the background here. This all being Kubrick's means by which to tie himself to the protagonist to tell us he's seen some shit. For other details, this movie came out in 1999, when the last Kubrick film Full Metal Jacket came out in 1987, meaning more than 10 years went by. Kubrick has, by this time, mastered his craft multiple times over, and really does not need to prove anything. But as a true master of his craft, he sets out to do so anyway with a film he himself desired to make. Not because it would be a profitable product, but because the artist has something to say. This film, however, is just a cover-up for the true motive in showing the people how things were really ran. Remember that Kubrick was beloved, or at least favored by many people in some very tall ivory towers. Kubrick himself decides to go for an incredibly niche novella as a disguise to do what he wills. Our theory goes further as Kubrick died only a few weeks before or after completing Eyes Wide Shut. I say before or after as it is debated if the true final cut of this film ever saw the light of day. Part of this has to do with Kubrick's professionalist obsession involving his editing of the films. For every film, Kubrick was said to make edits until the last possible moment. Kubrick dying on March 7, 1999 was before the official release of Eyes Wide Shut on July 16, 1999. Multiple parties close to Kubrick debate to what degree the film was cut up after Kubrick's death, just prior to release. Rumors have existed for years about the state of a true complete copy of Eyes Wide Shut, but there seems to be no concrete evidence for this still existing. And just going back to the Kubrick moon conspiracy for a second, Eyes Wide Shut came out on the 30th anniversary of the launch of the Apollo 11th mission. There, no more moon talk. Mind you, as always, I skipped over some features of the conspiracy segment because I could. Did someone kill Kubrick because the original uncut copy of this film tell too much? Maybe. I'm not high enough in rank to get an invitation to Epstein's Island, but I was telling people about that island back in 2014. Took the rest of you to hear about Orange Man going there, and an entire season of South Park to hear about it. Kubrick definitely knew a great deal. It should be noted that Kubrick could have just died from a regular stress-induced heart attack. He worked tirelessly on Eyes Wide Shut for 15 straight months, so I could see the guy dying after having a moment to relax. His daughter was also getting involved heavily in Scientology at the time, which stressed Kubrick out a great deal, and probably contributed to his decline. A rank, fairly good in, but not a perfect one. I'd call it B, but it's better than that, and I never bothered to have like a middle rank, so we're just going to round it up to A. It's done. Stop asking me if I'm working on that video. Anyway, wow, what a guy. If I left this project with anything, it's a sense of respect for what movies used to be. Truly, Kubrick is an example of what it used to mean to master a craft. The man made only 13 movies, and while often questionable at times, he never half-assed anything. Sure, I placed a few of those movies higher than others, but my goal with this video was to compare Kubrick's filmography against itself. Compare it against, I don't know, Steven Spielberg, and it's nothing. Spielberg has made, to date, 39 movies, and most of them suck. His only good movies are E.T., the Indiana Jones movie with that Nazi monkey, The Goonies, Jurassic Park, and that's it. I'll sooner rewatch The Killing before any of Spielberg's other 35 movies. No, I will not review his entire career because I have better things to do. Truly, the man pushed what we can call a movie experience. Minus Lolita, of course. All around alright guy. Honestly, he died at a good time. He didn't really live to see CGI ruin movies. He's at the great central bank in the sky where CGI can't hurt him. Video over. Stick around as I abuse my lack of empathy for views. With your help, I can someday get the money to justify going back to therapy. And if you have questions about my condition or have an idea of what I should do next, then comment below. My time is practically worthless.